Think back to a childhood summer, 2 months that felt like they'd never end. Now think about last year. It's already gone, and you can barely remember where it went. You didn't imagine that. Your brain is doing something measurable, something scientists have only recently started to actually prove. Let's start with the simplest explanation, the one that's been around for over a century. It's called proportional theory. When you're 5 years old, 1 year is 20% of your entire life. That's an enormous chunk of your existence, packed with firsts. First day of school, first time on a bike, first best friend. But when you're 50, that same 12 months is just 2% of your life. Mathematically, it's a tiny sliver compared to everything that came before it. Your brain seems to judge time by comparison, not by the clock. And against a lifetime that keeps getting longer, each new year keeps getting relatively smaller. That theory makes intuitive sense, but it doesn't explain everything. Because if it were only about math, a year should feel exactly the same speed for every 50-year-old on Earth. It doesn't. And in 2025, a study finally showed why. Picture your brain as a camera. When you're young, it's shooting in fast motion, snapping a new photo every time something even slightly different happens. That's what researchers at the Cambridge Center for Aging and Neuroscience actually found. They scanned 577 people, ages 18 to 88, while they watched the same 8-minute Alfred Hitchcock clip and tracked exactly when each person's brain activity shifted from one distinct pattern to the next. Each shift is essentially one mental photo, a new moment your brain flags as worth separating from the last one. Older brains took noticeably fewer photos. Watching the exact same 8 minutes of footage, the moments in an older brain increasingly blurred into each other instead of staying separate. Scientists call this neural de-differentiation, and here's why it matters. Your sense of how much time has passed isn't measured by a clock in your head. It's reconstructed afterward based on how many separate photos you have to look back on. Fewer photos, and that same 8 minutes or that same year simply feels like it went by faster. So that's 2 mechanisms already: shrinking math and a slowing camera. There are 2 more, and they both come down to the same root cause: your brain running on autopilot. The first is physical. A Duke University engineer named Adrian Bejan noticed that your eyes make rapid scanning movements called saccades dozens of times a second to take in the world. As you age, those movements measurably slow down, and the nerve signals carrying that information to your brain slow down too, as the pathways lose some of their insulation over the decades. Fewer visual snapshots reach your brain each second than they did when you were young, quite literally, before your brain even gets the chance to file them away. The second is chemical. Decades of research have linked dopamine directly to how your brain tracks time, something scientists call the dopamine clock hypothesis. But the exact direction of that link is still genuinely disputed. Some studies, particularly in Parkinson's patients, found that raising dopamine levels made people overestimate how much time had passed, as if their internal clock sped up. Other more recent research, using precise optogenetic control of dopamine neurons in mice, found the opposite, that boosting dopamine actually slowed the internal clock down. What almost every study agrees on is that dopamine, which naturally declines as we age, is doing something to your sense of time. Scientists just haven't nailed down exactly what yet, and underneath all of it sits the simplest piece of all: novelty. When everything around you is new, your brain works hard to encode it, spending real energy tagging each moment as unfamiliar and worth remembering. That's childhood. Everything is a first. By adulthood, most days follow the same commute, the same rooms, the same routines your brain has already filed away as already known. Familiar information gets compressed or skipped almost entirely because your brain doesn't want to waste energy re-recording something it's cataloged 1,000 times already. There's a strange twist buried inside that novelty effect, something psychologist Claudia Hammond named the holiday paradox. Think about the last vacation you took somewhere new. While you were living it, the days probably flew by, packed with new food, new streets, new faces, barely a spare moment to notice the clock. But when you got home and looked back on that same trip, it suddenly felt like it had lasted much longer than it actually did. Hammond found the explanation lies in exactly the same mechanism driving the rest of this. In an ordinary 2-week stretch of routine life, our brains typically judge only 6 to 9 moments as distinct enough to be worth remembering. During 2 weeks on holiday, that number can jump to 6 to 9 memories a single day. More memories laid down means more material to reconstruct the timeline from afterward, so the trip feels, in hindsight, far longer than the same 2 weeks spent at home ever would. It's the exact same mechanism mechanism behind the fading years of adulthood, just compressed into 2 weeks instead of stretched across decades. And it proves the effect isn't only about aging, it's about how densely your brain is recording at any age, in any given stretch of time. 4 separate mechanisms then, plus the paradox that reveals how they all connect. A shrinking fraction of your life, a slower mental camera, a dopamine system that's clearly involved even if scientists disagree on how, a brain that's simply seen too much of your routine to bother recording it twice. And underneath all of them, the same simple currency, memories laid down per stretch of time, which your brain later caches in to decide how long that stretch felt. All of it points the exact same direction, and together, they're the reason a year at 50 disappears the way a single week used to at 7, and a 2-week vacation can feel longer in memory than the 2 months of ordinary life surrounding it. But here's the genuinely hopeful part. Every one of these mechanisms runs on novelty. Break the routine, learn something unfamiliar, walk a street you've never walked, and your brain snaps back into that dense, high-resolution recording mode it used constantly when you were young, and constantly on that vacation you still remember so vividly. It won't slow the clock on the wall, but it appears to be the one lever that actually changes how much of your own life you get to remember having lived. Time isn't speeding up. Your brain is just running out of reasons to notice it.